now just to like get people warmed up a tiny bit, what's rewarding about running your clubs? For me at Row New York, it was definitely seeing the programs in action, you know, seeing the pieces come to life. Hi, Ted. And so I'd love to hear from you, you know, what's rewarding about it? So for me, it would be like actually going to a practice and seeing the Row New York kids on the water, the programs themselves. Connections, yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, yes, definitely pushing the para rowing, building relationships, friends, juniors. I also really liked watching the young staff, which is something I thought about when I started Row New York, how gratifying it was to see young staff develop within an organization, which happens when you're there for a long time and you're not as young anymore, or young, right? Mentoring the newer coaches, exactly. Impact on the community, getting people on the water. Okay, great. So we can talk about COVID. There's no, you know, shortage of COVID opportunities here. What, take that out of the equation for a second. What is most challenging about running a club? Don't think COVID right now, because I think that's a separate question. So dial back to last year at this time. What's challenging running a club? Yeah, costs, alignment of visions, right? Money. Yeah, enough coaches. Yeah, hiring coaches was not easy. Getting enough people, staffing. Okay, and we'll have all of these notes, right, Jack? We can get these, right? Okay, super. Diversifying programming, coaches. So a lot of people have trouble. Wasn't just us finding enough coaches. Okay. Promoting diversity. Yep, we're gonna work on that one. Different groups, right? Yeah, if you have masters, juniors, para, competitive, recreational, right? Trying to make everybody happy. Different groups. Pipeline for new rowers and coaches. Okay. All right. And then one last quick question for the chat. What's one resource that US Rowing just right away could provide to you all? You know, if we could just like hit a button, what would it be? So it doesn't have to be even practical. I mean, don't say send us a check for $1 million, but COVID guidance. Okay. Look at Pocock Foundation's Boathouse Leadership Series. Good to know. I don't know about that. Find us a coach. Yeah, maybe we can make a clearinghouse for coaches. Better resource network. This is what I'm trying to get at, is what are the things that we can centralize that would be helpful to administrators. And I've had these conversations with adaptive rowers, parents of rowers, junior rowers, collegiate coaches, college rowers. Who am I leaving out, Brett? I don't know, with a lot of groups. And one theme keeps coming up around, can we centralize some resources for people? You know, if everyone's looking for coaches, can US Rowing become a place where you can look? Hi, Mary Bush. Yes. Regional leadership, diversity committee off the ground, science. Yay to science. Data, maintaining volunteer assistance, organizational development, sense of value beyond insurance. Yes. Yeah. So I'm going to be honest. I'm like very much a straightforward person. When I was running Row New York, if somebody asked me why we were members of US Rowing, I would say, I mean, that's how we get our insurance, and it's a really good insurance deal, right? One of my many goals is for us to provide a lot more value beyond that. And one thing I've learned, actually, I only started in November, but one thing I've learned pretty quickly was there actually is a lot more value, but we're not necessarily letting people even know about that value. I mean, and I think Chris Chase, and I'm not just saying this because he's here, has been a huge change maker since he joined US Rowing in terms of providing value, coaching education with Brett and with Chris, but all of these seminars and webinars, and really trying to be a resource for clubs, rowers, etc. But there's a ton of work to do. So that's why we're having this conversation. Insurance is not a good deal for small clubs. Okay. It's not a good choice to do anything other than rowing, which is necessary boathouse economic model. Yeah, Row New York had to get extra insurance too. So we can talk about insurance, salaries, policies, regional leadership. Okay, so this is truly a listening tour. So I'm gonna stop talking and I'm gonna start just asking you all to let me know, talk to me and my colleagues a little bit about what we can do to provide value for you as club leadership. Deb, what? That's not Deb. No. Okay. Does anybody have anything?
So you mean we get to unmute and just have at you, Amanda? Is that the deal?
If you don't want to, I can go get my wine and I can just warm up for the, what's next, Brett?
Oh, this is great. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's why I'm here. Yeah, bring it on.
Thank you for unmuting. I think this is going to be great. I'm looking forward to what people have to say. I'm Ted from Community Rowing. I just want to say I really appreciate you allowing us to have this conversation. And I'm gonna mute again, but I'm really excited just to hear what other clubs have to say.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's why I'm here. And also, no one should see this as the first and the last conversation. The idea is to have an ongoing conversation with all of our stakeholders, and you are a large and important group of our stakeholders. So yes, have at it. What can we do differently, better, stop doing, start doing? Let me know. Yeah, you're supposed to unmute.
Okay, this is Deb Sullivan. I'm in East Bay Row in Rhode Island. And one of the things that I was taking away from the annual convention, which was awesome, by the way, and so nice to be able to access it via Zoom and everything. But one of the things that I took away from being a club that has juniors as well as masters is, and more from the junior side, not that we have anybody at this point contending to continue on, or that I would anticipate right now going into the nationals world, but having listened to that high-end coach speaker, it would be, I came up with the question, of course, after the fact, but it would be interesting to see the natural growth pattern that they would want from beginning rowers. What is that like super annoying thing that we, like I come from this as a teacher of middle schoolers, that I would see, God, why wouldn't the kindergarten year teachers teach this? Like, where's that growth pattern? And I mean, we all have our own processes and theories and way we coach and techniques and everything, but is there, one or two things that are so critical to teach at the beginning that then can help in the long run? I don't know. It's just
no, you do know. Well, first of all, thank you for teaching middle schoolers. Somebody has to love them. Thank you. And that's a great idea, right? So just so I'm hearing this right, sort of like the message from the senior coaches, whether it's Casey coaching the juniors or even the national, senior national team coaches, what's the thing that they inherit where they wish they could say to those kindergarten teachers?
Right, exactly.
You make sure they don't do, yeah. Okay, I like that.
Just a thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
What else? What value can we bring to you all besides insurance? Ben. Hey, Ben.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. I'm Ben Quick. I'm the ED of Pioneer Valley Riverfront Club in Springfield, Mass. And I think whenever the topic of U.S. rowing comes up, there's kind of an 800-pound gorilla in the room, which in my observation is that U.S. rowing only cares about two things, which is the Olympics and money. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I would love to see the organization take it a step further and say, well, if we have a foundation that supports the Olympic team, why not have a parallel foundation or an arm of that foundation or another level of that foundation that supports development of the sport.
Yep.
Because there's nothing like increasing a base to grow the pinnacle of the mountain. And I've always wondered why the National Rowing Foundation doesn't have a concerted, serious resource pool for organizations that are trying to get past whatever that hurdle is, you know, hiring your first full-time coach, hiring your first full-time ED, you know, being able to staff your program more than 5 hours a day and 5 hours a week for some part-time coach. So that's my observation, and I am an ardent supporter and defender of US rowing, but that's a hard question for me to answer because I really don't know the answer. So thanks for listening.
Well, I think that's a fair statement, though, that you made. And I'd say we all know that 99.5 or 9% of rowers are not going to go on to join the national team, the senior national team. And I'm very much committed to supporting all of the efforts of US rowing. So, you know, that's coaching education, that's para, that's adaptive, that's club infrastructure, fundraising, all of those pieces. So I'm very much looking forward to that work, and helpful to hear that does sound like it's of value to clubs. And the more specific you guys can get, you all, I learned in the was anyone else in that training on Saturday, the LGBTQ plus, right? Y'all, I can't say y'all though. I'm from the North. Yes, I feel like you have to be from the South to really get away with that. You all, the more specific you can be, that's great. You know, what are the trainings, like Deb, I loved hearing that. What are the trainings we can provide? What are the resources? Do you want us to create community online for you all? Do you want us to, you know, try to centralize where you can find coaches? You know, let me know, or let us know. So what else?
So building on that, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Felix the Cat from USRowing Foundation here in North Carolina. We have a master's program, an adaptive program, try to build a competitive center. So we have big plans. Right now we are tiny infrastructure. So what I really liked about your presentation last week was that you offered this workshop on fundraising. I mean, I just want to make sure that everybody hears that. She volunteered to teach fundraising, and I think that was great. That was absolutely great. Because I'm one of those guys too that think I don't get enough out of US rowing for what I pay for it, to be honest. And the experience was when we started Chaos Rowing, which is the master's program 7 years ago, there was no resource anywhere in US rowing to figure out how you actually start a club. I mean, the how-tos, benchmarking, we had to do all of that ourselves. I mean, we had to run a benchmarking study. What are success factors of starting clubs? What do you have to do? What do you have to stay away from? And if we did it, I assume everybody else had to do it too. So it would have actually be easy for US rowing to put together somebody so we would have a resource, or everybody who comes after us who wants to found a club has a place to start with. And we can share with you guys what we did and where the breaking points are for programs, you know, size-wise, and when they normally fail and all these things, and who should own the boats to prevent the club from failing and such things. We did all that, so we are happy to share. And I think that's the next point I would like to make. US rowing does really poorly in power shopping or pooling. You know, you guys are selling my address to pretty much everybody out there who wants to sell something. And if I go to the US Rowing website, it shows me that I have an ad blocker, and you guys therefore refuse me to show me the content of your website. So, you know, that's not a really good part to start a dialogue with your members if you actually block your only content you have for them to view. But what I meant—
Oh, sorry, I missed that, Felix. It's an ad blocker?
Yes. If you have an ad blocker in your browser, you cannot visit the US Rowing website.
Okay, I'm looking into that.
Yes. And so what we have been pushing for, and Chris knows that for us, as small clubs, it was a matter of survivals to keep people engaged during COVID. So to offer services to them so that when the membership due renewal comes along, they actually pay the $550 because otherwise we can close down. And we didn't get anything from US Rowing we could have used to keep people engaged. I mean, the webinars everybody mentions who were absolutely great and they were unique and they were the best things I ever got from US Rowing, to be honest, they stopped in May. And our membership renewal is...
Felix, can I just jump in for a second? Did they stop in May? I thought
no, they went into July.
Yeah, but just when our membership renewal came along, you stopped and nothing came after that.
Well, I don't know about that. I did them into July and then did more in September. And the only reason I stopped, to be honest, was that we were getting down to like 15 to 20 people that were signing up for them because everybody got back to rowing. There was no reason to keep having
Yeah,
them.
we weren't. So just take it as we really liked it. They were the best thing we have ever sold. And now the question is, can you expand? Can you expand? Can you do other things we can pass on?
Okay, so the webinars, people, I mean, I think I know this. People, we've gotten so much great feedback. And again, kudos to Chris Chase on that. But that's good to know.
And then Yoga for Rowers, we had to do the Riverside Chats, Petalumados. So we now, small clubs, are basically pooling our resources to start to be able to offer something to our members. And I said, we small clubs shouldn't be doing that. I think US Rowing should start to
Yoga
offer these
for
things.
Rowers, that's a good idea. Yeah, if we offered something like that. Yeah, okay, that's a great idea. And I think I'll look into the website too. And this has come out of other Zooms as well and throughout the convention, this idea of so people aren't recreating the wheel every time they start a club, can we codify all of that for folks who are starting something? And the answer is absolutely, we can. And if anyone is interested in helping me in that process, let me know. Otherwise it's gonna be me with my dog typing away. Barbara.
And just so you know, Amanda,
yeah.
One of the things that we're trying to do, one of the other things that happened this summer was that we did camps for masters, camps for juniors, and we did camps for coxswains. And so they were using up our Zoom and we only had 6 employees. So they were using up our resources every day as well. That's why we stopped in July for the webinars. But out of that came 273 webinars. And so like on fundraising, for instance, we have a whole series on grant writing and fundraising. We have a whole series. We did 13 on DE&I, 13 different talks. And what we're trying to do is group those all together so that over the winter, we have those available for people who didn't get to see certain things and want to go back and look. But I think for, building clubs and whatnot, things like fundraising, things like club leadership, things like developing a board, those are all things that are resources that will be perpetual now. Like we have those, they're already done. And we can group those, and then you guys can get access to them. So
that's great. Thank you, Chris. I'm gonna respect Rebecca Clark raising her hand.
Thank you. Let me lower that. I'm Rebecca Clark, and I'm the board president of the Albany Rowing Center in Albany, New York. This is my 2nd year as the president here, and in part, I'm just going to speak from my personal perspective as a rower. So I learned to row eons ago in Seattle at Holy Names. Rowed through college, rowed through grad school in Arizona, continued rowing in Texas, spent some time in Nebraska, didn't row there, spent some time rowing in the Bay Area. So before coming to New York. I think as with many people who wind up in leadership roles at small rowing clubs, I wound up in a leadership role here on relatively short notice. And so I'd echo some of the other speakers about being very interested in a lot of the boathouse leadership development. And I mentioned the boathouse leadership program organized by the Pocock Foundation earlier in the chat, because when COVID first hit and we were forced to close down, we're really left sort of scrambling for what do we do in a situation where there isn't really a blueprint for what to do next. The Pocock Foundation, I've been aware of their activities for quite a long time and joined in with the leadership series because there was a very focused, specific, and targeted set of meetings around topics having to do with how programs can address all the issues that have come up with COVID. So I found those to be much more effective personally for, how to work through the process of, what do we do in the face of this new challenge.
Of course.
So I think there's something for US Rowing to learn from kind of the template for how that series was organized for the sake of what US Rowing could offer, clubs across the country. And one component of it was, I think it really grew organically out of some efforts in the Pacific Northwest. So the majority of the clubs participating were clubs from the Pacific Northwest. And that gave leadership in those clubs opportunities to interact with each other and get to know each other better. When I came to New York, the region that I'm in, the communication between clubs is not that great. And so what I've observed across the different regions I've lived in across the country is that sort of organization on the regional scale varies tremendously depending on what part of the country you're in. And that dramatically affects what kinds of resources different clubs have access to and how strong that region is overall. And so it seems to me like there's a lot of room for growth on the part of US Rowing in terms of working on that regional level organization. Along with that, one thing that I don't have a lot of personal understanding of is just the nature of US Rowing itself in terms of the nature of the clubs that make up US Rowing. I have heard things about a number of the much larger clubs that are members of US Rowing that seem well-resourced, well-established, et cetera. But I don't know if that represents the majority of clubs, and I'm unusual for being a leader at a small organization, right? Or whether actually, in fact, no, I reflect the norm. Right. And so, US Rowing doesn't seem like it's talking to me.
Right.
So that's where
that's where we are right now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's sort of where I see room for growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are not unusual. Yeah. In any way. You actually represent what I'm hearing a lot about. Everyone thinks of Three Rivers, CRI, like these bigger groups, and there are tons of small and mighty clubs out there and that need support and need community. So thank you for that feedback. I think that's something we can do very easily is get an ongoing boathouse leadership series, and we could have different topics. Like 1 week could be fundraising, one could be operations, one could be staffing, coaching, education, whatever speaks to folks. And that could be a good ongoing conversation we have. We have a lot of hands raised. I can't tell. They went away. Brett, can you see which hands are raised?
Yeah, I see. Why don't we go with Dee Dee?
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Amanda. So
Hi,
I'm with Sac State Aquatic Center nowadays, formerly with JLAC. One, I want to also just give a huge shout out to Chris and Brett and Cam for all the work they did on the webinars and kind of also showing US Rowing that they could come into real age times with their information. I find one of the most frustrating things forever was to go to the site and have that opportunity to click the members only place to just find some poorly scanned article that came out of the 70s and the 80s, right? We've moved forward a lot, and I think that's one of the biggest things US Rowing has to do is truly move forward with the technology, quit coveting the knowledge that you have and actually share the knowledge you have. There's a lot of people with open hearts and open doors, and some of them just out of frustration stop being willing to share with all of us, just because, again, if you ask people, why are you a member of US Rowing, the two answers that always come is because this is the only way I can race and this is the only way I can get insurance for my sport. And there's so much more to offer
I
and so
agree.
much more value that US rowing has. And I think, you know, I still go back to a time when going out in a launch with Mike Spracklin and asking about his workouts. And he said, there's no secret to my workouts, and pulled his workout sheet for the month for the Canadian men's team and said, here, would you like to make a copy of it? You know, like having that openness and willingness from US rowing will go a long ways. There's a ton of knowledge that people will share,
Mhm.
and US rowing should be the collector, the holder, and the distributor of that information. So that's my thing.
100% agree with that, Dee Dee. Yes, definitely. That's our job, right? That's the role we should be playing. And I'm
Amanda, can I push Dee Dee on that a little bit?
yeah. Hi, Greg. Okay, we have Greg Benning, one of our board members. Thanks for joining, Greg.
Hi all. And I try to, I'm one of two vice chairs, and I get elected by the championship members as opposed to the regional reps, which get elected by the organizational members. So I've been on the board for 2 years. And like, you know, when the webinars got going this year, Chris and I tag teamed on how to find some sponsors, and it was like, oh, these are bankable. They get 500 people showing up at them. They're great. And, so NK, Concept 2, people like that were like, yeah, we're in. So I'm glad to hear people like those. Dee, I guess the question I would ask is, do you, and this is a question I have with the board, would you get more value out of US rowing collecting a whole bunch of stuff and coming out with a US rowing branded approach to, you know, boathouse in a box or something like that, or COVID reopening, or would you get more value out of us aggregating what's going on out in the field, saying, here's some really interesting best practices, and amplifying what's going on at other clubs? You know, do you get the crux of my question? Are you looking for the answer to come from us, or are you really interested in seeing what we think is the most interesting stuff going on within the membership?
Difficult question to answer because I don't know what product US rowing would give me. So,
well, for instance, Heather Atschulter at Pocock was aggregating COVID reopening protocols, and I sat in on a few of their sessions, and they were great. And I had some back and forth with her. And, you know, I think the thing that you were running into was everybody was very much outside of their comfort zone. And even within a board of directors that was typically aligned on a lot of issues, this one, you really got to see different, you know, where people shook out on a risk spectrum, and this was okay and that wasn't okay. And it was just very interesting to hear the open dialogue around that. And I thought it was extremely constructive. Or we can kind of go, okay, here's the stuff you've got to do, you know, XYZ, you know, in terms of a US rowing recommended protocol. And I think Ted Benford at CRI similarly had an open forum with a lot of club leadership from other places where they were kicking ideas around and coming up with things collectively. So I guess, do you get value out of us functioning in a forum like this, or, you know, saying, here's a standard and you can rely on it because it's coming from US rowing?
I guess I would have to say, you know, it's situational. There are certain things that I would love for US rowing to take a stand and be the national governing body and actual govern what is best practices and things for us to do. There's other things like when you bring up COVID, it's been so different across the country and where you are in your breakouts and everything else. And I think like myself, like many others on this here, like a bunch of us, you know, ended up meeting within our groups of more similar, we're in the same situation right now in this moment and this time, and, you know, got more information from each other. The nice thing that US rowing there would have done would have been saying, you know, here's the best practices happening in this region. Here's the best happening here. Here's people willing to help, rather than, you know, find out whose email address is still good because they've moved on to 3 other clubs since the last time you talked with them.
Thank you.
I think that Chris Case wanted to answer, go back for beat. And there was something he wanted to answer. Chris, are you?
Yeah, in terms of, I mean, more than half of you on this call are in my personal Google Drive already, and you all know that. Well, most of you know that. One of the things that started in Oklahoma City convention was a thing called the Business of Rowing, and the exact purpose of that class was to talk about best practices and, like, for your employees, are they independent contractors? Are they, employees? How do you do insurance? How do you do this? What are best practices around insurance? What are best practices about boathouse and equipment? Felix said a few of them earlier. Who owns what? Well, where does it come from? Those are all things that have been talked about for over a decade now, and we have taped them all. So those things are taped. And the conference I ran in January for the last 10 years also had Business of Rowing. What we call them, Matt, roundtables. Club management roundtables, and those are also, I mean, we have those things all done. And what you guys are saying is exactly what we've been really poor at, or US Rowing has been really poor at for the last decade at least, is communicating all of that to everyone. The shame of most of this is the answers are all out there. Nobody has to I see it in the chat about reinventing. Nobody has to reinvent these things. They're all there. We have just done a really horrible job of gathering them and sharing them. And that's what we have to do a better job of, because we have, hours and hours of videotapes of exactly what everybody's writing here in the chat room. And we just have to be better at that.
Chris. There are a couple of people who have had their, Sarah Lowe.
Yeah, my name's Sarah Lowe. I coach at Atlanta Juniors down in Roswell, Georgia. I just wanted to add, kind of building off what Chris has been saying and a couple other people, like it really does come down. I think one of the biggest opportunities I've seen with US Rowing, but also something I've seen change a lot in the last, 18 months, 24 months, is the level and consistency of the communication, right? So if we have all these resources and we have all these things happening, that's awesome. But delivering it in a way that's accessible to leadership and to our athletes and all of those things is super important. And I mean, I coach juniors, so I have a pretty specific view on that, from where I'm coming from. But even looking at the U19 coaching hiring process, that communication about that hiring process wasn't super visible for everyone until kind of the last minute. So just continuing to, we can all say this in our own clubs, we're always going to get complaints about communication, right? But as long as we're continuing to improve that and making it more transparent in the ways that we're able to, I think that's going to help us aggregate our resources and amplify our voice and do all the things we want to do if we keep focusing on improving communication.
Definitely. Yeah, that's top of the list for 21 is communications. Thank you, Sarah. Tied to that, a question I have, if you could all throw it in the chat. What's the best way, right? We all have Teams and Zoom and chats and emails and Instagram, and sometimes my head is going to explode, right? With all the ways that information comes in. So what do people prefer? What's the best way for us to get you information? Is it, and everyone wants and needs different information, right? So whether you're running a club or you're coaching juniors or para, or, is it, I know we need to, and we are going to overhaul the website. Is it a weekly, is it an email? What's the best way to get you? Or do you want to just be able to come to our website, not get through ads, and find everything that you need? Is that the best thing? Would you is email better? Instagram, Twitter, email or newsletter? Okay, what else? Email, playbook did we use? Okay. Yeah, I know. Who doesn't get enough emails? Ooh, your own wiki. Ben, getting wild there. Knowledge-based email, distribution list. I mean, my vision is a US Rowing platform of sorts. So whether it's an app, it's sort of one-stop shop for all of the resources, but that's going to take time and money. So we're not there yet. Email distribution list based on interest. Yeah. So it sounds like it's a combination, if I'm hearing you all right, that it's, make sure the information's on the website, but then, we can work on segmenting our lists so that we're getting you the information that's relevant to you all and important to you all. Yeah, not Facebook, don't worry, that's not happening. You don't need to talk me out of that one. Okay, so we have more hands raised. I can't see who's raising their hand for some reason. It just says, I know Dan's had his hand up for a while, so should we just do Dan in San Diego?
First of all, it's 65 and cold here.
I don't feel bad for you at all. Does anyone else in cold weather not feel bad for Dan in San Diego? No, you're not getting any sympathy from this group.
All right, okay.
No, sorry.
Well, you're welcome to come out and join us when things are more open. Thank you for putting this together today. As I wrote in the chat, the things that would be very helpful to us are a marketing playbook to be used by a local organization. Our organization our diversity does not match the greater community of San Diego. Our demographics are completely out of alignment. I don't necessarily think that's unusual. We would like to fix it, but on the West Coast, people don't particularly know about rowing. I should say California West Coast, not necessarily the Northwest. So people think we are paddlers or dragon boat racers or things that they see during the daytime. Our demographic tends to be wealthy, Caucasian, with just a smattering of families that are anxious to see their kids do well in college. This group here, Leadership Forum, is a good thing. I have gone to some of the US rowing conventions, and no offense to anybody, the business of rowing roundtables haven't been that good, because we need to hear the stories about the people who solved a hard problem. What do you do when you have $300,000 in debt? What do you do? What do you do when you have members who haven't paid for 3 years and are offended by being asked to do so? How do you do the blocking and tackling to run the operation of a boathouse? Mm-hmm. What are some tools and best practices? That's kind of about it. I do appreciate this. We are having a difficult time with DEI at the moment. Things continually come to the board as, and the quotes are, we should do what Row New York does. We should do what CRI does. We should do what the organization in Philadelphia does. The community out here and the environment is not the same. We do not have major corporations who have an interest in, we can't raise $450,000 in one gala. That was amazing. That's terrific. It's a good cause. It's really hard for me as president of the organization to continually get up, how come, why can't we do what Row New York does? And no offense to that program either, I think it's terrific, but it can't be the example every time someone needs an example of DEI. We need
I don't recommend it. Yeah. I'm kidding.
Just the last thing. I'm going to stop. That's good. Thank you.
No. It's super helpful. I can't wait to visit you in San Diego.
Please do.
And listen, not everyone should become Row New York. Every place is different, and I think that there's a way to be helpful to groups who are working on DEI, and we absolutely, that is on the list, is how can we be a resource to groups who want to do that work or are already doing that work. Ted's had his hand up for a little bit, so let's.
If I can add one more thing, I remember what I wanted to ask. One of our largest issues with DEI, and I've heard it from others, is transportation.
Yep.
If there's any way that we can brainstorm and resolve transportation on a nationwide basis, or even California or some group somewhere, it's a big problem.
Yeah, that's part of the puzzle. And I mean, the short answer is you raise money to provide transportation. But we can have many more conversations about this. In fact, twice a month, I'm hosting Zooms on Friday afternoons about DEI work for clubs, college coaches, people. If anyone wants to join, I'll send out the link for that. That's unofficially happening because the DEI committee of the board is working on what our full robust plan will be. But, wanted to be helpful in the meantime. So thank you for that. And Ted, and then Tara, I see you have your hand up too. Oh, and Ben. Okay, Ted.
I'll be super quick. Two quick points. I think the first is around DEI. I don't think there's a club of any size that isn't struggling with this and finds it incredibly challenging and existentially uncomfortable. And so, Dan, we're in the same boat for sure. And I think the other thing that is important is club leaders at all levels really do want to help each other. And I think that's a piece that maybe there's a fostering here that could happen, brainstorming more than suggesting. But Matt Logue is the one, I appreciate the shout out, Craig, and Matt and I really put this together, but Matt's been the one who's been really charging forward with connecting executive directors of larger boat clubs regularly. And I think there's a momentum here where COVID has really created more of a leveling, because one thing that I think could be helpful is that the leadership of clubs of all sizes, certainly the larger clubs, we've been there and we've been part of smaller clubs before. And the value, I think, of regular forums is that they can address thematic challenges. So I don't know if there's a way monthly or quarterly or where leaders of all club sizes really listen to each other and do have that organic sharing of best practices. So it may be a website resource, or it may be more organic than that, because I think a lot of the things that have come out of the conversations that Matt and some of the EDs have fostered is bringing things up and then getting them answered in the moment, specifically in terms of context and everything else that you don't necessarily get on a website. So all by way of saying, if there is an opportunity for, if there is one thing that the COVID crisis brought, it is a greater comfort with Zoom. And I know that there's enthusiasm among club leaders of all shapes and sizes to support each other in some super challenging issues that aren't necessarily going to be resolved by US Rowing, but could be resolved among ourselves and supported by the organization.
Yeah, we can be the group that brings everyone together and then work collaboratively to be resources to one another. Absolutely. I mean, for sure. Thank you for that, Ted. Tara, you've had your hand up for a while. I think you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Amanda.
Hey.
Hi. I had hold on. So one question I had was, this is not new for a national governing organization of a sport to have to reinvent itself and to be the be all, right? The governing organization, the place where people go for resources. Who does US Rowing look at for inspiration when it comes to a national governing body that's actually really doing really well? And I'll just give an example. In para, for me, it's Para Nordic Skiing. They have an amazing pipeline. They support their athletes. They're hooked up with equipment. They do all these great things. They're even poaching my rowers in the winter, which is great. Cross training, awesome. But I'm just wondering, and you don't have to answer the question, but this is not new, right? And this has kind of been my broken record thing of like, there's a lot of really great national governing bodies out there. Similar to that would be that CCR Foundation picked up the ball at the beginning of COVID that Pocock Foundation did in gathering up boathouse leaders. And we picked up that ball with the para community because we found out that para often requires close proximity for volunteers to be able to help. And so you've got this really complicated system, but there were clubs a month ahead of us with COVID in Australia. There was clubs a month ahead of us, and they had already started to go back to work. So CCOR decided to convene a global group of para professionals to find out what was happening in Australia, what was Rowing Canada's guidelines, what was Rowing Australia's guidelines, and what was really working. So just a plug, tomorrow is the 6th Para Rowing Global Meetup, and you can register for free. And we've got people coming from all over the world tomorrow to talk para about the end of the year. But anyway, I don't know if you had an answer to the first question, but
yeah, the answer, I mean, I'm in week 7. So I have been trying to get to know some of the other NGBs, and my answer right now is that there are pieces of what some of the other NGBs are doing that I want us to emulate, like ski and snowboard. I mean, there are certain things they're doing that are phenomenal. But when you ask them, oh, well, what about everything besides your national team? They will say, that's so secondary to everything that we do. And they don't, they don't say it in a disparaging way. So to answer your question, Tara, I think that there are, I'm borrowing pieces from different organizations. And if any of you have recommendations where you think like gymnastics is doing some really good work on gender, I have a call with them next week. If the work's already been done, yeah, why reinvent the wheel, right? So I'll have a fuller answer, but super interested to talk. I'm talking to swimming this week. Yeah, there are a lot of good answers out there already, for sure. Chris Chase, I think you wanted to jump in again too, but I'm not ignoring Ben.
Well, let Ben go. Ben, by all means.
Okay.
Ben, I see you both. Yeah, they go.
Oh!
Hello, guys. Let them go, by all means.
It's a twofer. I have a few things, but Rebecca Clark in Albany, specifically towards you, several years ago in response to a lot of small community clubs in the Northeast, Ben started our very own networking group. So email us, ben.quick@pvriverfront.org. It's all small clubs. Sorry, Ted.
Yeah, Ben, I was going to say, I don't think I was ever invited to that.
No, because you're not a small club and you're not a community club. These are, we specifically meet with groups that are community-based, youth, adult. We also have dragon boating. Now we have kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding. So it's a community program, and we didn't want the big clubs because it's not the same thing. That also to say that neither one of us has any ego at all. And Ben has called almost everybody out of the blue and introduced himself and said, hey, I'm Ben. I'm the director of PVRC. What do you do about this? I need help. We've done that 100 times. It's all great. It's regional. We've had people from all over the country ask to join our group. And of course, we're very welcoming, but it really shouldn't be up to us. Amanda, maybe you can duplicate this throughout the country. That's number one. Number two, interesting parallel between nursing. I'm a nurse, and coaching. And I've been saying this since we've become involved in US Rowing. Sorry to bring this all the way back to the beginning. That one of your selling points for the coaching education could be that standardized education can bring coaches from having a job to being part of a profession. And this is what's happened in the nursing community. And so when we have people in our group say, why should I bother doing US Rowing Level 2 or beyond? It's because that standardized education brings respect to this job and makes it more of a profession, so that you have the rowing coach profession, not just a bunch of people who coach rowing.
Right.
So that's a selling point for you. Number three, Chris, we know you're a genius, and we would have loved to have participated in all kinds of your webinars. Unfortunately, I was caring for veterans during COVID, and Ben was trying to keep our club going. All to say also that the communication was very last minute. So it made it very hard for us to plan that into our schedule. And we would love to be able to access that and some of the previous conventions easily on the website. I know I'm echoing things that some people said, but I just love to talk.
No, that's helpful. And coaching education, I mean, you have the right people on here with Brett Gorman and Chris Chase, and certainly an important place for us to put our resources and to be supportive for sure. Chris, did you have something you wanted to say or no? Chris Chase, you're muted.
John has his hand up. John.
Okay, John. All right.
Hey, thanks. Well, I think it's just great that Amanda's doing this for US Rowing. So this is just a big step forward. So I've got a couple hats I wear in rowing, and one of them is a regatta hat. So I was wondering, we're talking about pooling all these resources for clubs. So my club happens to be a bigger club, but big clubs, small clubs, it's all good to share that data. Same idea on running regattas. I think would be a nice, off to the side thing to keep going as well, or to start, whatever you want to call it.
You mean if someone's hosting their first regatta, sort of a how-to?
Even big regattas that, a pool of resources that, like I'm on the Dad Vale board, and, it's been the same way forever.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a wiki kind of a thing you could just launch into and get some different ideas that other regattas doing it. We have people that are involved in other regattas and they bring ideas, but we're certainly not connected to all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, John, one of the things Sarah McAuliffe and I have spoken about is having a series of roundtable talks with all the major regatta people and coming up with a regatta Bible and sort of setting standards, everything from standards of judge referees and how you pay and deal with them to, porta potties and, you name it, all the things that nobody, snow fencing and all the things that nobody thinks about.
All that stuff.
The iceberg, right? 98% beneath the water. So that's coming, and I'm glad that you just volunteered to be on it. So, so this is how this
works. I want to be on one more thing. I need one more thing to be on.
Don't we all? The thing that Amanda I wanted to say is, so what you may or may not know is for 25 years I ran Saratoga and disparaged US Rowing quite a bit for everything that they were not to its members. And when I got hired and came behind the curtain, what I found out is it's a shoestring budget. Somebody had brought up in the beginning, like our national team, we care about the national team. Well, the reality is all that money, millions of dollars, comes from the USOPC, not from US Rowing. And so when they have their money, it's already been appropriated and earmarked for them, and it has to be used by the national team. When you say, well, why don't we do this for the domestic side and all these programs and all the things that you guys are putting, you have to remember that 80% of all of our individual members pay $9.75 a year to be a member. What you may not understand is all these things that we want, all these resources, they're made or created or furthered by people. People cost money. Somebody put turnover. One of the things that I realized is that we have no money, and therefore we're constantly getting entry-level people to do jobs. And as soon as they can get a real job, they do it because they're not getting paid what the market would give them to do the job somewhere else. But we never, the minute we talk about, like somebody said, I want you to lead. Dee Dee, you said, I want you to lead. The minute we bring up lightweights, people go berserk. The minute we bring up masters, people go berserk. The minute we bring up raising dues. So let me give you an example. 80% of our individual members pay $9.75. Now, one of your clubs could last on $9.75 for your members to pay. So that's number one. Number two, when we bring up things, like it's very polarizing, some of the topics, everybody wants what they want. Masters want what they want. Juniors want what they want. Lightweights want what they want. Everybody wants more. And as we all know from running our own clubs, it costs everything that you say we want costs money. And there's no revenue streams coming in. So when you say, I want to go to the website, but I want an ad blocker. Well, the only way for us to get sponsorship is by having those ads. So, I mean, if we take out the ads, then where does the revenue stream come from? And what is it, how do we pay for the other things? If we raise due at regattas, people say we're trying to make more money. If we raise memberships, we did a study on somebody brought up national governing bodies. So I will tell you, we did a study and a survey of other national governing bodies. The next governing body closest to us in individual membership fee is badminton, and they get like $35 a year. I said badminton. You heard me, badminton. $35 a year. Everybody is $45, $55, $65 a year. We're at $9.75, and everybody wants more. The old saying about squeezing water out of a rock. And believe me, guys, 25 years I ran Saratoga out of a community of 48,000 people. And we had all these problems, all of them, and we continue to have them. And COVID has only made it even worse. And, you know, all the times I disparaged US Rowing, $9.75 is what 80% of our individual members pay. It is an untenable situation. And so the catch-22 is, if you charge more, people say, I don't want to pay that because we didn't get enough resources for the $9.75. And if you charge more, people say, well, I'm not doing this. You're holding me hostage for it in order to race. Well, our insurance policy is almost $1 million a year. Start with that. The last time we tried to raise dues, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying this, Amanda, so mute me anytime you have to. The last time we intended to raise dues, even an incremental amount, the insurance company came to us and said, we're doubling your policy, the cost of your policy. Every dollar made, and people went berserk on us. Oh, you added we went up 35, 45% for our insurance policy. We didn't get $1 of that. It all went to the insurance company.
Hey, Chris, I'm so sorry to do this to you, but like we've got the next one.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I just
Chris, you got to recognize that Chris did 150 nights at 7 p.m. in the last year. So the dedication is really incredible. So I've seen some of the chat comments, and please don't take offense if Chris is, but I think the idea is, back to Amanda's point, is this feedback is incredibly valuable. And I think listening better and communicating better are things that are easy to do, that just need more consistent attention.
And we're looking forward to that. And it's 7. Thank you. Let's keep the conversation going, everybody, really. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.